Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me in a class about not only finding joy in service, but keeping the joy in service. Because, when you start off, you're all excited. You're doing this wonderful new thing and it's awesome. And your enthusiasm level is like all the way up here. But your real knowledge is like all the way here. But you love it. You love it. You're insanely passionate about it. That's like the day when I ran my first list. I knew I had finally found my place. And I enjoyed learning. I enjoyed working but gradually my knowledge went up, but my enthusiasm went down. And I got to about to here when I said, okay, what am I doing wrong? Why am I not so excited every list? And I began to realize that I knew the lists were a lot of work. I knew that people were just going to be complaining or yelling at me and trying to pull lots of shenanigans. Oh, I don't have my fighter card. Oh, I don't have this. Can't you, don't you have a paper where you can look it up instantly? And I'm like, dude, because it was mostly dudes, dude, you want to be Prince and you can't get yourself organized enough to bring a membership card, to bring your fighter card? Sorry, eject, no list for you today. That's what I wanted to say. But I couldn't. I had to find a way and work around. And there are lots of people here who do service of one type or another. And I will absolutely tag you because there's no one way that works for restoring your joy in service. For myself, what I did was I made a list of the pros and the cons. What about the service? What about this job in particular that I loved? And what were the things that I hated? So the things that I loved, I kept to one side. The things that I hated, I looked at and said, okay, now how can I move this from the I hate side to the I love side? And when you don't have internet and iPhones and all of this, because I'm talking 93, 94 in the dark ages, before we had all of these really great iPhones and things. So then, I hated the prep work. Okay, fine. I'll do the prep work sooner than Wednesday. It's planning and making a list and sticking to it. So you're always sure to have what you need and it's packed and ready to go, not on Friday morning when you're busy trying to pack everything else, but like Wednesday. So if there's anything missing, you've got plenty of time to deal with that. Now, and you want to have your volunteers all lined up if possible before the event, because one of the things I always disliked was that frantic last minute search of, hey, can you volunteer for lists? Can you help run a list today? So it's part of being prepared to run the job. And the other thing that I disliked it was whenever I reached for a pen, it always seemed to be out of ink. And so I went through and I ink tested all of my pens and all of the colors because I used a 3 or 4 color pens. Because of course different things have to have different colors to make it easy to spot. Yeah, colors are good. Colors are your friend. And yeah, and as you move things from one side, from the I hate to the I love sides, then you could do more with it. And it was less of a chore and more of a let's go run list. Bring your personality and silliness to it. That's one of the best things you can do is being high energy. You can be absolutely, utterly exhausted, but like the fighters, you've got to amp yourself up for this, for your job. Be excited. And when you're doing the job, you always want to look like you're having fun because if your job looks miserable to do, who's going to want to do it? So do whatever it takes to smile and to laugh and to have fun. Go flouncing around the Eric if you need to. Make sure the other thing that I cannot stress importantly enough is to have a good support system. A good, reliable support system. Balin was my support system, just as I was his. And the hardest part of it all was when we were both doing kingdom level offices at the same time. Then we dragged in some friends kicking and screaming, but they were awesome support system. Look at Allison kind of going, yeah, yeah. Now then, perhaps, I mean, Allison, you run Heralds, you do a lot of work. What do you do to keep yourself amped up and enjoying your office?
I have learned when to say no. And I think that's a key part of it is knowing when to say, I just can't do that no more. I'm sorry. I hit I'm like you. I hit burnout at one point and I took a step back. And sometimes you have to do that in order to regain your joy for the service. Um as far as keeping myself going, again, I'm with you. Having a good support system is critical. Um, with our camping group, there are 3 people in the camping group right now who don't have jobs and SCA jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And they have been a huge help when it comes to morale because they're the ones who end up as our support system, who are the ones making sure we're watered, we're fed, making sure that we have what we need, making sure that we're taking breaks when we need to, and forcing us to pulling the pelican and going, no, sit, you over there, you get out of the sun, that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, your support system is crucial when it comes to keeping the joy in the service. I think the other thing is doing something that you enjoy. Doing a service because it needs to be done is one thing, and we've all done it. I know that anybody who has reached a point that we have has done a job just because nobody else will. That's a fast way to burn out. But at the same time, sometimes it just has to be done.
Mhm.
Um, find the volunteer that can help you with that. Look for the people that might be willing to take on this job. Look for the people that show enthusiasm towards doing something. And again, don't be afraid to say no.
Yeah, the no word is very powerful. If you think you're getting in over your head and there's just no more interest and you just can't find that interest within you, then it's past time that you need to step down and take a break. One of the things that Balin taught me is that you are always looking for your successor. Always have that person in mind. Take them under your wing or your arm and train them and find out, ask them the questions. What would you do in this situation? Because there are very few things that are as important as having a successor, that drop dead person. So in case if you drop dead, they can pick things up and run them really well. Something else. Well, Allison, looks like you have a comment, or is it just agreeing with me?
I think in my case, it's more a
But
matter of I have no idea who to look at for my successor, because this particular job requires a specific skill set. It requires the ability to be an office manager and to be an administrator. And I really, with the Herald Corps right now, we're tending to pass it around amongst the same people, and it's becoming it. I think we're running into that problem across the board in all of the offices, all the various offices. I'm seeing nods of agreement from Kidda and a couple other people, and Ed. Yeah. So really, I don't know what I'm not sure what I'm going to do at this point as far as a successor for my office. I don't know.
yeah,
I don't know where I was going with that statement.
At some point, scream.
yeah. Go ahead, Edward. Say, what do you mean by at some point just scream? Okay. Yeah, at some point, scream. Just go, I've got to have some help. And I wanted to insert another word in front of that, and then I remembered it was recording.
You should have heard Helga this morning.
And then, again, part of your job is to always be looking for new people. Go out to the fringes. I never, as much as I tried to have my list staff filled beforehand, there were times when life happened and someone couldn't make it. So if I walk around the Eric, all I would find are people who are just as busy as I am, with either their fighters and office, marshaling, heralding, any one of 1,000 things. So I went off to the outside to the fringes and I say, hey, I really need some help. Would somebody like to learn how to run list and participate? And almost every time I was able to drag somebody in from the fringes and start them on the path of service, because it was like their first time being on the Eric instead of off partying in their camp. And I got some amazing people by doing that. So don't be, and if you go out there with the whole enthusiasm, hey, have I got an opportunity for somebody in your camp? How about coming up onto the Eric? Whoop, coming up onto the Eric and try and learning a new skill. Come on up, learn how to run list. It's easy. All you're going to be doing is recording, numbers and whether they won, lost, died, got killed and completely out, or whatever. And we have people, there's snacks, there's liquids, and after everything's done, there's drinks if you're of age to drink. And that way, you bring people in from the fringe into the mainstream by showing that joy in your service. And sometimes people who are out on the fringe, they walk by and they look in and they think it's a closed world. And it's not. It's an open world, but they need that invitation to come in and play. Or as somebody once said to me, "Cool, you mean I get to play with the cool kids?" You know, okay, we're the cool kids, but there's room for more cool kids. And you talk to them. And your own personal joy in your service is absolutely infectious. Yeah, exactly, kidda. They need to be invited because they're afraid that if they come up and say, "Hey, can I do this?" or "Do you need any help?" they're afraid of being told, "No, I don't need your help. I don't want your help. Just go away." And unfortunately, that happens way too often. So they do end up like in the Herald Circle. Not that I say that they do that, because they're always teaching, but I'm just using them as an example. But the Vesper Herald is being passed around the same people, instead of having that nice cycle of being able to, finish up somebody's training, hand the job off, and know that you're done for a decade, which would be really awesome at this point for the Heralds, I'm sure.
Well, I think any of the positions really it would be nice if we could hand them off to new people. This all goes back to, how do we recruit? How do we get new people coming in? A lot of this ties back to Lash's early session, just the last hour, which is reaching out to the fringes and the newcomers.
Mhm.
I have worked on this question for a while, is how do I reach out to people who might be interested in being a herald? And I don't know the answer. I wish I did. I may try doing some more reaching out via social media. I know that I've been a little lax on that end. But back to the subject of finding the joy. I don't know what the answer. I honestly don't know what the answer is, because if you don't enjoy doing service in the first place, you're not going to be able to find the joy. I think there's a very specific personality type that likes doing service. And a lot of times it's introverts who like doing service, because it gives us a way to be involved without putting ourselves out there. Yeah, Rorik's got his thumb up down there. That was my thing. That's why I got involved in service, was because I'm not an extrovert. I'm an extroverted introvert. I have to be an extrovert in order to do what I do. But at the same time, I'm really an introvert, and being too much of an extrovert for too long really is tiring to me.
Yes.
So,
I
yeah.
I sat and I thought for hours about teaching this class, because I'm very much an introvert. But give me a job and I'm all of a sudden this huge extrovert, because I feel like I am making a difference. And knowing that you're making a difference brings a lot of joy. It's so like, well, looky here. I did this. My team did this. My team did this. And we made it work, and we made it work well. And something else, I personally take a lot of joy in telling people what an awesome job they're doing. By telling them, I can very much at the back of my head say, yeah, and I taught them. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy thing. You teach well, you get the rewards. Okay, here we go. Breathe. You know, that's when your power, Brew was pointing out in the comments that, but you know, any of you can unmute yourself and make a comment. Just kind of give me a signal, a little wave of the hand, because this is all good stuff that's coming up in my comments. But if people are afraid that if they volunteer for one thing and then being overwhelmed with being asked to help for this and
Mhm.
that and another and not getting a chance to just play, that's a bad thing. That will drive the joy out of any job. And it all goes back to the conversation we had earlier about saying, no, I'd like to take this event off because I want to play. I want to take this event off so I can compete in arts and sciences. You know, don't let yourself become, you know, one fold. I made the mistake. I did that. I ran list and list was all I did. And I did list at Kingdom and I did list at Principality, both of them. And I did list for marches. And that's all I ever did was the list. So when I turned over the Kingdom list, I looked around and I'm like, huh, what do I do now? And, you know, and I stuck my toe in a couple of different offices and a couple of different things, but nothing brought me back that same joy as running lists did. I tried heralding. I tried, but at the time I found the heralds to be very closed and it was like, no, Elise, why don't you go run a list? Because that's what you do really good. And I tried to enter arts and sciences and I got told, you know, Elise, you're really not good at this. You should just stick with lists. And all of those sort of things because, and in a way, I had done that to myself. And it made it really hard to break into something new. So always remember, you are not just your office. You like to dance. And I see Rue kind of smiling at that. You like to dance. You like to do Bardic. You like to do arts and sciences. You like to do archery. You like to do equestrian. You know, so make sure you schedule yourself some events where you're not doing any of that. You know, yes, Kidda.
To your point, my friend Talina, she has this really good thing about where she knows her limits and she's really good about saying no. And I think that what you can do is sit down and think about, what am I comfortable with? Am I comfortable with saying, I can do one thing and that is all I'm going to do? And then just be confident in that and say, this is my one thing. Or say, I feel comfortable doing a couple of things, but give yourself the permission to have a limit.
Absolutely. And give yourself, no matter how much jobs you're doing and how many competitions and everything else, give yourself permission to have events where you're not going to do anything but sit around and visit with friends. And in the evening, you're going to go see what different groups are doing. You find awesome Bardic circles that way. You find awesome dance that way. And sometimes you have a chance to just sit down and have a drink with an old friend that you've been wanting to sit down with. And you just haven't had the time. Well, make the time.
And to add on to the whole limits thing, be honest with your limits. I know so many people that you know, feel like they can do more than they realistically can, but they're not willing to admit that to themselves until they've dropped the ball in multiple places. I think that's a pitfall that a lot of newer people, I know that, you know, I fell into it, tons of other people fell into it, where, you know, you really feel like you can do this, you can do that, you can do this other thing, and you know, you're not honest with yourself. So even when somebody will come up and say, hey, do you need help covering this, you know, don't try to remember that it's okay to delegate and ask for help, and you know, be honest with your own limits and say, you know, I do need to let myself have a stopping point.
Yeah, that's a very good point, V. No is a valid word. Somebody comes up to you and asks, hey, do you need help? The answer is always yes. Because not only are you unloading a burden from yourself, you're giving an opportunity to somebody else. An offer of help is an opportunity. And it's how you train up people. It's how you discover that, hey, this person is interested and I bet you they'd be really good at it. And I see a couple of nodding heads. Share the wealth. Go ahead, Ness.
Well, I just put it in the chat, but one of the things that I'll have learned to do is that when somebody comes and asks me to do something, if it's really not something that I can take on, you know, I'm really sorry, I can't do that thing at this time. Have you talked to so-and-so or so-and-so? And suggest someone else for them to go talk to about doing that. Because maybe their skills are better for it than mine are, or I just happen to know that, oh yes, a thing that I can do. So I'll try to find a way to direct somebody, direct them to someone who might be able to assist them.
Excellent point.
Well, and adding on to that point, I think that's also a great way to, you know, show that you do pay attention to what your friends and fellow officers and fellow volunteers are good at, and B, it's a great way for people to make new friends. I mean, I've seen so many people become friends or fellow officers or whatever by saying, hey, I can't do that thing, exactly like Ness was saying, you know, but have you talked to so and so? You know, I know they're looking for help.
You know, one of the other really nice things about having an office and doing the service is a lot of times you look around and you see somebody that's bored and you can introduce them. I mean, I always needed list pages. You could send them off to the Heralds. You could send them off to archery. You know, maybe you can introduce them to their new passion by just taking a moment and talking to them. It looks like Edward was saying something about something or just pointing the fingers, or what was that all about?
He's just being evil.
No, I was doing, you were saying, you know, if they look bored, oh yes, I could do something with this.
Yeah. I mean, again, keeping your own joy in service also means reaching out to others and allowing them to dip their toes in the pond, as it were. You know, or if you know somebody who has this incredible voice and you can hear them for miles, walk them yourself over to the Herald's table. I'm sure they can put a good voice to work. or somebody, yeah.
I was gonna say, if they can be heard for miles, chances are one of us is already gone. You're hired.
True. And maybe they just need a more serious invitation, or a walkover and an introduction, because people can be shy, especially when trying to approach somebody who looks like they're so extremely busy. They don't want to interrupt and they're just overwhelmed by the person, which happens. I know I was terrified for the longest time to approach Megan and say, can I learn the list? And she was like, sure, pull up a chair. But at the same time, don't be offended if somebody says, no, I'm going to go and watch them walk away, because, well, maybe they are that true introvert who's just kind of poking his head out of the sand and looking and building up their courage in small steps. And sometimes that's the way you catch somebody, is you start actively engaging with them on non-job related stuff. Because they see shiny medallions and they see pretty hats, and they may see both a pretty hat and a shiny medallion, and you approach them and they want to go, bye, and turn the other way and run, or they think, what did I do wrong? Because being intimidated by peers and pointy hats is a thing. We try to diffuse it, but it is still a thing.
Yeah, there's that whole peer fear thing again, which, much as we love wearing our bling, most of us, it can be detrimental in that aspect.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things, if you are truly busy in that situation and you don't have time to take on a trainee, possibly the best answer you can give is, I would be delighted to talk to you about this, but right now I'm up to my neck in this. Could you come back in half an hour perhaps? Or meet me later. Sometimes you got to do that. It depends on what you're doing. But if you're up to your neck and you can't talk to them at this point, just tell them, no, I don't want to tell you no, but can we do this later, please?
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of times, you may be the person in charge, but you have other people. So if this person comes bouncing up all enthusiasm and energy and says, I'd like to do voice heraldry on the field, you look over at them and you say, okay, here's Fleeg. Fleeg, why don't you teach him the ropes? And there you have taken only a moment of your time, and in so many cases, you've got to give them that moment. And you've paired them up with somebody who can give them more time, that you trust, that knows the job. It's how you build up a corps or a cadre. And again, you come back and you check on that pairing when you have a moment to come up for air. And you say, hey, how are you doing? Are you enjoying this? What do you think? And you'll get told, I'm having a great time, or I didn't know this was like this, or I didn't know there was so much math, or, or the other one was, wow, it's really hard to pull a bow. Any of those things. And they've learned, and you've passed knowledge on. Go ahead, Edward.
What you're talking about, the role you're describing as being a proper delegator in that case, that once you delegate it, you still have the responsibility to follow it up.
Yes.
You can't just expect it to be done. You really do need to follow up on the assignments you give and make sure that they're happening. Because it's still your responsibility, even though you delegated it.
Yes, absolutely. You don't want to turn a volunteer against a job because you paired them up with somebody and they didn't get along, or they thought the other one was being a pretentious poppycock. And so you undo that pairing and say, well, maybe you'll work better with so and so. And if you have the opportunity, you make the switch. Or there's always, why don't you pull up a chair and sit and watch? Because that's an awesome thing, and it puts lets the introvert be an introvert, but at the same time they're still involved. And you warn people that, hey, you might get a question, or you might get somebody who's like, I don't understand. And if you can take the time right then, explain. And if you can't take the time right then, you'll say, let me have just a minute, and then go back and explain. It's so important for people the number one thing is people need to feel appreciated. They need to feel like you want them there, they're welcome, and there's so much to learn and to do. Ah. Anybody else want to jump in with any comments? I mean, I would love to know, because I know there are peers and people who work hard in here. What do you do to keep your joy in service? Or how do you convey it?
Change the
Go ahead.
job from time to time. I went from doing children's activities for maybe 4 or 5 years and starting to lose patience with some of the kids and realizing that, I really do need some adult interaction, to moving over to archery for a while. It doesn't hurt. If I didn't
No.
do something at events, I'd be bored.
Fair. Totally have the same issue. I'm Lizette Ilrose. I'm a Pelican and Entier. And I don't necessarily change up jobs as much. I change the aspect of the job that I'm doing and try and delegate and train new people. So I'm a herald and I do retinue and Entier, and my branch, during my time as branch herald, I ended up recruiting a bunch of heralds to do the parts of the job I didn't like. I am a voice herald. I love court. Field, no problem. Town cry, I can do that. Ask me to consult on armory? No. But by reaching out and engaging others in those areas, even though they weren't areas I was interested in, it still brought me joy to help introduce others to their joy, if that makes sense. To
Mhm.
help them find things that they were excited about, even if it wasn't something that I knew much about, I could still introduce them to the right people or the right resources in order to learn.
Yeah, and there is nothing that feels as wonderful as having that person bounce back to you and say, thank you. I had the best time ever talking with so and so. And now I'm going to do this and this and this and this, because now they have that high enthusiasm and very low knowledge. But that brings that rejuvenates the joy in the person who made the recommendation, the person that was working with them. And there's so much joy to be shared. Just, there really is. Right now, being new to Entier, I'm still trying to figure out what I can do.
What part of Entier did you move to?
I am up at the very tip of the Olympic Peninsula up in Port Angeles.
Oh, way out there.
Yeah.
There's definitely some good people out there though, but yeah, it's hard. especially during this pandemic to figure out. But I mean, the good news is there's so much going on online. This is my 4th event of the day. This is my
Yeah,
4th.
but unfortunately, I'm not a really good Zoom person because I see all of these faces that I miss so much that I want to just reach through the screen and try and hold them into a huge hug.
Mm,
I mean, there's Carrion down there who makes the world's most incredible fudge.
aw.
And Rue, who, there's that smile, and Rue, who for so many ways in so many ways I considered almost a protege. And I miss her so much. She sends me the coolest cards.
Aw.
And so a lot of times Zoom events makes me sad. But we're talking about joy.
Well, and your mention of cards is another really good point and way to help spark joy in others. So, one thing that I started doing, do I have it? Right within arm's reach. Sorry for the loud noise. I just knocked something over. I started getting, even if you're not a royal peer or whatever, that doesn't mean you can't give thank you tokens to people. So I ordered a bunch of tiny charms. These are my little filigree hearts that I give out to people who are doing service.
Lizette, you're frozen. Oh, you were. You're back.
Sorry,
Sort
my
of.
internet being wonky.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a royal peer, a seated baron, baroness, prince, princess to king, queen to give out thank you tokens. And so I have little filigree heart charms that I give out to people who are doing service because they're showing they have a heart of service in order to help recognize them. And that both bolsters my joy because I am helping bring someone up and helps encourage them to have their joy in service as well. There you go.
Alison has coins. Thank you so much, Lizette. And as she said, anyone can give out little tokens. I used to have like a basket of cookies that I would just give out to people who were doing wonderful things or service. And it was you're doing incredibly well. Thank you so much for volunteering for this job. What are you allergic to? Can you have a cookie? And those were really, that was a really well received because who doesn't love a cookie? And then there would be for there would always be that alternative for somebody who couldn't have a cookie. A little token. I was notorious for a while for giving out little mouse things, mouse charms.
Coins are
Alrighty.
good. Coins are good in the West because a lot of people like to gamble.
Yeah. Well, we've been pretty much open. If anybody else has anything they'd like to say on the joy that they found in service, how they'd like to give joy to other people performing service, this is your opportunity. Oh, you're welcome. And I think we may actually finish up a few minutes early, not many, only 4. And we can stop recording.